The remote northwest highlands of Queensland are a spectacular network of oases and rocky outcrops, with tens of thousands of years of Indigenous history.
There's a lot of ceremony grounds up there. There's a lot of song lines, a lot of artefacts. The country's just littered with artefacts.
Some of the traditional owners of this country, the Wanyi, own a campground here, employing people from the nearby community of Dumaji. But just over the hills behind the campsite is a much larger enterprise. It's both an economic lifeline and a source of much anger.
And I never sweated in the mine, and I'm never going to work in a mine nowhere in the world because they're the dirtiest bastards on the earth.
The company which owns this zinc mine has proposed to demolish a sacred hill long considered to be off limits, creating new splits in the Wanyi community.
They say that we're one of the oldest living cultures in the world. Why should we start desecrating our sites for financial benefits? There's got to be a time to stop.
You've said this whole process has been painful. What do you mean by that?
Very painful, because what happens is the system, and when I talk about the system, I'm talking about big business, I'm talking about mining companies, I'm talking about the state government, I'm talking about all the powers that be. They create confusion and division and ugliness between First Nations people.
The Century Zinc Mine was built in the 1990s as the nation grappled with the High Court's Mabo judgment recognising native title, forcing mining companies to negotiate with Indigenous leaders, often for the first time.
I'm Clarence Walden and I am the chairman of UGRAC. What Century has put on the table wouldn't feed my dogs. My dogs wouldn't get a feed out of it.
A quarter of a century later, Clarence Walden remains a fierce mine opponent.
I fought Century from day one and I'm still fighting the bastards. Yeah, and I'm not going to give up.
Traditional owners did eventually strike a royalties deal with Century Zinc after the Queensland government threatened to override their native title rights. And a continuing point of tension was the mine's impact on sacred sites.
And it's really, really dangerous. And that's why the old people didn't want us to take it before they even put a shovel down there.
Unfortunately, you know, it's a sad fact that from the moment they dug, they destroyed sacred sites on Wanyi country.
The mine ceased production 6 years ago, and the site was earmarked for rehabilitation. But the sacred site's controversy re-emerged when the new mine owners announced plans to retreat the tailings with high-pressure hoses and mine previously untouched zinc deposits.
These are decent scale ore bodies right next to the plant. We can utilise for further feed to extend the mine life out.
One of these ore bodies is next to Magazine Hill, the last remaining major sacred site on the mining lease. This hill contains a rock shelter traditionally used as a campsite for recently initiated males and the place where ceremonial artefacts were discovered. Did the Wanyi really have the power to say no to that proposal?
No, they didn't. Regardless of whether Wanyi people said no or stood up against it, they would have went ahead anyway. You know, out of respect.
Alec Dumaji is the chair of the legal Wanyi body involved in negotiations with the mining company New Century Resources. He decided to cut a deal, consenting to a management plan for the excavation of Magazine Hill and securing an Indigenous employment agreement through a mining services joint venture.
And this is someone that will, you know, help, I guess, bring about economic development and, you know, financial independence away from, you know, not just waiting for handouts.
But other Wanyi are angry with both New Century and Alec Dumaji over threats to a sacred site.
We only got one left, so why can't they just, you know, leave that with us at least? It's not only for the Wanyi people identity, but for all Indigenous people in Australia.
The controversial proposal was put to a vote of Wanyi people at a meeting here at Adele's Grove 3 years ago. The officially recorded outcome of strong majority support for the mine expansion remains hotly disputed.
I don't think it has been carried out properly. You know, you might have a fair amount of numbers of people on that register, but they're not Wanyis. The real Wanyi people are the ones who are actually standing up and fighting them.
Was it a fiery meeting? Was there a walkout?
Look, there was some mob that turned up and it got a bit fiery, but other than that, that's at every meeting. All I'll say is no one was excluded. I'm not sure if there was a walkout, if people walked out, but again, no one was told to leave.
At the heart of this dispute is scepticism about the benefits of mining, despite 16 years of royalties, and the perceived injustice of the original mining agreement over 2 decades ago. Do you think the mine has done some good for the Wani?
Oh, I don't know.
What about all
They made a lot of promises, we never saw that promise.
New Century Resources won't let us onto the mine site. This is about as close as we can get, and the company declined an offer for an on-camera interview. But they did tell us they're seeking a second engineering opinion to see if Magazine Hill can be preserved, although the option of demolishing it is still on the table.
If you ever see Magazine Hill, it's actually right on the edge of the pit wall. It's teetering on the edge. So, look, I'm no expert, I'm no scientist, so I'm no geologist, but I think eventually it probably will fall in.
Although New Century has secured an agreement to proceed with mining, work has yet to commence. And the Wanyee is still coming to terms with what this means for their cultural heritage embedded in this remarkable environment.
These people who are in favour of it getting knocked over never really thought about the cultural part, never really thought of how dangerous it is to humans. Yeah, black ones.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.